When it comes to Drake, the ruling is in. If you are ready to see what the official end of the Karen era actually looks like, leave a like and subscribe right now. Because the news that just broke is one of the most significant developments in hip-hop in the last 2 years. Drake's defamation lawsuit against UMG over Not Like Us has been formally dismissed by the court. And that single sentence changes everything about where this story goes from here.
Leave a like because this outcome matters for the culture, for artistic freedom, and for everyone who has been watching this unfold for nearly a year. The lawsuit has been sent to the Cosmic, and rather than paraphrase the ruling, we are going to read it directly. Because Judge Vargas, the judge the OVO community was counting on to deliver their guy a lifeline, delivered something very different. This is precisely what happens when a rap battle loss gets carried into a courtroom.
The ruling states the following. This case arises from perhaps the most notorious rap battle in the history of the genre, the openly hostile exchange between Aubrey Drake Graham and Kendrick Lamar Duckworth in the spring of 2024. Over 16 days, 8 diss tracks were released, with escalating rhetoric and increasingly charged accusations. The second-to-last song in that exchange, Not Like Us, landed the decisive blow. It went on to become a cultural landmark, generating both massive commercial success and significant critical recognition across the industry.
Drake brought this action against UMG for defamation, harassment in the second degree, and a violation of New York general business law. And the court's conclusion is stated without ambiguity. The allegedly defamatory statements in Not Like Us are non-actionable opinion. The motion to dismiss is granted. That is the ruling, that is the finding, and that is the end of the case.
The question this outcome puts on the table, for Drake and for everyone who encouraged and supported this lawsuit, is a simple one. Was it worth it? The court did not narrow the claims. It did not send them back for revision. It dismissed them entirely because the legal foundation was not there. And what that means for Drake's standing, not just in hip-hop, but in every professional and institutional context where this story has been watched, is genuinely historic. This ruling belongs next to every Kendrick Lamar and Pusha T bar that publicly dismantled him, because it may be the most definitive L he has ever taken.
Because the full picture of what happened here is worth stating clearly. A rapper was so comprehensively beaten in a public creative competition that he took the loss to a federal courtroom, and the court told him to leave. That sequence of events has no real precedent in any arena, not just hip-hop. Drake spent his remaining credibility in this culture, damaged his institutional relationships, incurred significant legal costs, and contributed to UMGs on top of that. And the return on all of it is a dismissal that confirmed none of the claims were legally sound enough to proceed. And what makes this especially difficult to process is how unnecessary it was. After the beef, Kendrick had won clearly. But Drake was still commercially viable, still institutionally supported, still sitting in a strong second position on one of the most powerful rosters in music. He could have made music, stayed in the game, and preserved whatever credibility remained. Instead, he wagered all of it on a legal strategy that just got thrown out in the most public and definitive way imaginable. And now the chips he bet on that strategy are gone.
Because the full sequence of moves Drake has made since the beef ended all lead to the same place, trying to convince people he won, spreading narratives about Kendrick, running media proxies and counter-campaigns, filing this lawsuit and extending it for nearly a year. Every single move in that chain has left him more isolated, more discredited, and more commercially compromised than before he made it. And this dismissal is not just the end of the lawsuit, it is the end of the last institutional option he had available.
What happens now between Drake and UMG is going to be one of the most consequential things to watch going forward. The relationship was already strained before this ruling. Drake has been publicly antagonizing label executives. The industry has been maintaining increasing distance. And UMG still controls significant portions of his catalog, which means despite everything Drake has done to damage the relationship, he does not have the leverage to move forward independently in any meaningful way. And with this ruling now in the mix, any projected timeline for Iceman has just become significantly more uncertain.
Because without the label's active support, the music does not move the way it needs to. And Drake has now managed to lose the organic support of the culture, the interest of the broader public, and the goodwill of the label infrastructure simultaneously, all within the same general time frame. 3 foundational pillars, all gone. And whatever move he makes next is going to have to be made without any of them in place. Knowing Drake, a move is coming. And based on the pattern of every decision he has made over the last 2 years, it is probably going to make things worse. But stepping back from the Drake analysis for a moment, the most important thing about today is not what it means for his career, it is what it means for hip-hop. Because the real winner of this ruling is not just Kendrick Lamar, it is the culture itself. With this lawsuit dismissed and artistic expression in rap affirmed as protected opinion, rappers are not going to have to evaluate legal exposure every time they want to say something real in a competitive context. The threat Drake tried to establish over this genre has been formally and legally removed.
Because if this had gone to trial, if a court had been willing to entertain the argument that the content of a diss track constitutes actionable defamation, the downstream effects on hip-hop would have been severe. Labels reviewing lyrics for liability before approving releases, artists calculating legal risk before putting words on record. The entire ecosystem of direct, unfiltered competitive expression that defines what rap is would have been placed under a legal cloud with no clear ceiling. The court saying no, calling these statements non-actionable opinion, is one of the most important things that could have happened for the health of this genre going forward.
That said, the damage this lawsuit caused along the way is real and does not disappear with the ruling. There will be lasting hesitance, particularly among artists who are more label-dependent and less resourced to fight a legal battle if one came their way. But what this ruling establishes clearly, that a diss track is not a deposition, that a rap battle is not a defamation claim, that artistic expression in this culture does not require the approval of the person being expressed about. That principle is now on the record, and it matters.
The culture has been diluted enough. There have been too many people occupying space in this genre who do not genuinely respect what it was built on or what it is supposed to represent. Watching the court dismiss this case clearly and decisively is a moment worth genuinely appreciating. Hip-hop's voice is still intact today, and Drake's fanbase, the people who spent a year defending this lawsuit as righteous, now have to absorb another significant public loss on top of everything that has already accumulated.
Kendrick Lamar was spotted at a soccer match the day after the ruling came down, headphones in, completely composed, watching the game like someone with absolutely nothing unresolved pressing on them. And knowing how controlled and private Kendrick always is in public, regardless of circumstances, that level of composure at that specific moment raises a genuine question about whether he and his team already knew this ruling was coming before it was publicly announced. That kind of settled calm at that exact time is not accidental.
And the stakes of what almost happened here deserve to be acknowledged clearly and directly. Because this was not just a Drake versus UMG dispute. This was a case that, had it proceeded to trial, could have fundamentally altered what rap is allowed to say and how far creative expression in this genre is legally protected. Had defamation claims based on diss track content been allowed to move forward? Had a jury been asked to evaluate whether the lyrics of a competitive rap song constitute actionable harm? Every artist working in this genre would have been affected by the outcome. The precedent would have extended far beyond Drake and Kendrick.
Labels would have had new and unprecedented tools for managing what their artists express in competitive contexts. The calculation before recording a diss track would no longer be purely creative. It would involve legal review, liability assessment, and the very real possibility of costly litigation regardless of who won in court. That is not a hypothetical future. That is exactly the environment Drake was trying to create with this lawsuit. And the fact that a judge looked at it and said, no, these statements do not qualify as actionable defamation, is the single most important legal protection for rap music that has been established in a very long time.
And it is worth being specific about who this ruling protects beyond just Kendrick Lamar. Every artist who wants to say something pointed and competitive about a more powerful figure. Every rapper who wants to speak truth to power in the way this genre has always done. Every songwriter who creates from a place of genuine conflict and genuine emotion rather than from a place of legal pre-approval. The creative freedom that is foundational to what rap is and what has made it the most culturally significant art form of the last half-century survive today. And that is not a small thing to sit with.
And even with all of that genuinely good news on the table, one question keeps coming back. What does Drake do next? Because the pattern of his decision-making over the last 2 years has been consistent in one specific way. Every time a door closes, he finds the least rational available option and walks through it. The label reportedly told him at some point in this saga that if his issue was truly with Kendrick Lamar, he should stop routing everything through intermediaries and address it directly. And with every other option now formally closed, the appeals exhausted, the cultural narrative fully set, the possibility of Drake filing against Kendrick personally cannot be completely ruled out.
And as someone who genuinely cares about this culture, beyond just wanting to watch Drake face consequences, the idea of that lawsuit and the precedent it would attempt to establish is not something to dismiss lightly. Because even if it gets thrown out just as quickly, which it likely would, the process of defending against it carries real costs. The discovery that would be triggered has real implications, and the signal it would send to every artist in hip-hop about what can happen when you win a beef against someone with resources and a sustained grudge would linger long after the case itself was resolved. A loss in court for Drake does not undo the damage the attempt itself would cause.
And the broader question of what the next chapter of this story looks like, beyond just the legal dimension, is genuinely difficult to map, because Drake has exhausted the mechanisms that were supposed to give him leverage. The lawsuit is gone, the label relationship is fractured beyond easy repair, the cultural goodwill is depleted, the Iceman rollout is stalled, and whatever move comes next is going to have to be made without any of the institutional or cultural infrastructure that made previous moves viable. Every option from this point forward is more exposed, more difficult, and more likely to accelerate the decline than reverse it.
And the most revealing thing about all of this, the thing that captures the full arc of what has happened since the beef ended, is the contrast between how the two principals in this story have conducted themselves. Kendrick Lamar has been spotted at soccer matches, at Disneyland, at family events, composed, private, present, going about his life with the ease of someone who has nothing unresolved and nothing to prove. Drake has been commissioning smoke clouds, building ice fortresses, releasing 69-page spike journals, filing lawsuits, and calling his CEO dust. And the court has now formally confirmed what the culture confirmed a year ago. One of these approaches was right, and one was not.
This lawsuit has been followed from nearly the very beginning, through every motion, every filing, every development, every twist. And this is the outcome that was needed. Not just for Kendrick, not just for Drake's victims in this saga, but for the culture. Hip-hop's speech is preserved. Artistic expression has been affirmed as protected opinion by a federal court. Drake has been dismissed by the legal system as completely as he was dismissed by the culture that preceded it. And for everyone who has stayed through this entire story, through every frustrating delay and every infuriating development, this one is for you. Leave a like if you are glad that rap still has its voice, and check out the suggested video to see exactly how Drake's fanbase reacted to all of this, because the chaos that followed was one of the most revealing moments this entire saga has produced.